The Life and Adventures of Santa Claus by L. Frank Baum. Bersey. The forest of Bersey is mighty and grand and awesome to those who steal beneath its shade. Coming from the sunlit meadows into its mazes, it seems at first gloomy, then pleasant, and afterward filled with never-ending delights. Civilization has never yet reached Bersey. Will it ever, I wonder? The Child of the Forest. Once, so long ago our great-grandfathers could scarcely have heard it mentioned, there lived within the great forest of Bersey a wood-nymph named Necile. She was closely related to the mighty Queen Zerline, and her home was beneath the shade of a wide-spreading oak. When she was created, she could not have told. Queen Zerline could not have told. The great Ak himself could not have told. It was long ago, when the world was new and nymphs were needed to guard the forests and to minister to the wants of the young trees. Then, on some day not remembered, Necile sprang into being, radiant, lovely, straight and slim as the sapling she was created to guard. Her hair was the colour that lines a chestnut burr. Her eyes were blue in the sunlight and purple in the shade. Her cheeks bloomed with a faint pink that edges the clouds at sunset. Her lips were full red, pouting and sweet. Her dainty feet were sandal-clad, while her head remained bare of covering other than her silken tresses. Necile's duties were few and simple. She kept hurtful weeds from growing beneath her trees and sapping the earth food required by her charges. She frightened away the gadgulls, who took evil delight in flying against the tree trunks and wounding them so that they dropped and died from the poisonous contact. In dry seasons, she carried water from the brooks and pools and moistened the roots of her thirsty dependents. That was in the beginning. The weeds had now learned to avoid the forests where the wood-nymphs dwelt. The loathsome gadgulls no longer dared come nigh. The trees had become old and sturdy and could bear the drought better than when fresh sprouted. So Necile's duties were lessened, and time grew laggard, while succeeding years became more tiresome and uneventful than the nymph's joyous spirit loved. That a wood-nymph should grow discontented was not thought of by Necile's sisters. It came upon her only after many years of brooding. But when once she had settled in her mind that life was irksome, she had no patience with her condition, and longed to do something of real interest, and to pass her days in ways hitherto undreamed of by forest nymphs. The law of the forest alone restrained her from going forth in search of adventure. While this mood lay heavy upon pretty Necile, it chanced that the great Ak visited the forest of Bersey, and allowed the wood-nymphs, as was their wont, to lie at his feet and listen to the words of wisdom that fell from his lips. Ak is the master woodman of the world. He sees everything, and knows more than the sons of men. That night he held the queen's hand, for he loved the nymphs as a father loves his children, and Necile lay at his feet with many of her sisters and earnestly hearkened as he spoke. "We live so happily, my fair ones, in our forest glades," said Ak, stroking his grizzled beard thoughtfully, "that we know nothing of the sorrow and misery that fall to the lot of those poor mortals who inhabit the open spaces of the earth. Often as I pass by the dwelling of some suffering mortal, I am tempted to stop and banish the poor thing's misery. Yet suffering in moderation is the natural lot of mortals, and it is not our place to interfere with the laws of nature." "Nevertheless," said the fair queen, nodding her golden head at the master woodsman, "it would not be a vain guess that Ak has often assisted these hapless mortals." Ak smiled. "Sometimes," he replied, "when they are very young, children, the mortals call them, I have stopped to rescue them from misery. And this very night," continued Ak, "as I came to the edge of Bersey, I heard a feeble cry, which I judge came from a human infant. I looked about me and found, close to the forest, a helpless babe lying quite naked upon the grasses and wailing piteously. Not far away, screened by the forest, crouched Shigra, the lioness, intent upon devouring the infant for her evening meal. "And what did you do, Wak?" asked the queen, breathlessly. "Well, not much, being in a hurry to greet my nymphs, but I commanded Shigra to lie close to the babe, and to give it her milk, to quiet its hunger, and I told her to send word throughout the forest to all beasts and reptiles that the child should not be harmed." "I'm glad you did thus," said the good queen again, in a tone of relief, but this time the seal did not echo her words, for the nymph, filled with a strange resolve, had suddenly stolen away from the group. Swiftly her lithe form darted through the forest paths until she reached the edge of mighty Bursey, when she paused to gaze curiously about her. Never until now had she ventured so far, for the law of the forest had placed the nymphs in its inmost depths. Necile knew she was breaking the law, but the thought did not give her pause to her dainty feet. She had decided to see with her own eyes this infant Ak had told of, for she had never yet beheld a child of man. All the immortals are full grown. There are no children among them. Peering through the trees, Necile saw the child lying on the grass. But now it was sweetly sleeping, having been comforted by the milk drawn from Shigra. It was not old enough to know what peril means. If it did not feel hunger, it was content. Softly the nymph stole to the side of the babe and knelt upon the sward, her long robe of rose-leaf colour spreading about her like a gossamer cloud. Her lovely countenance expressed curiosity and surprise, but most of all a tender, womanly pity. The babe was newborn, chubby, and pink. It was entirely helpless. While the nymph gazed, the infant opened its eyes, smiled upon her, and stretched out two dimpled arms. In another instant, Necile had caught it to her breast and was hurrying with it through the forest paths.